Well, welcome back to another one of our studies in Colossians. Today we'll look at Colossians 1:16 to 17. And in this, we see Paul continuing his attack on the Gnostic heresy, but also in doing so, exalting Christ, which is what we should also always do when we are talking against anybody, is we make sure that we don't just talk against them, but exalt the Lord as well. Well, let's look at it and see what it says. For in him all things were created, things in heaven and on earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones or powers or rulers or authorities, all things have been created through him and for him. He is before all things, and in him all things hold together. Well, let's look at this phrase by phrase and see what Paul is saying. That first phrase says, for in him all things were created, things in heaven and on earth, visible and invisible. Remember that the Gnostics said that there was the real God, the supreme God, and then there was this chain of emanations of lesser and lesser gods, and angels fall in that. Then Christ came below the angels, and then finally you come down to the very end where there is this evil God that could create matter and touch material things. And they said it was this evil God that created the world. And what Paul is saying is it was in Christ that all things were created, that he made it all. He was the agent of creation, and he's the goal and the end of creation. In other words, this is all about him, and he didn't do it from a faraway place. It wasn't the angels. It wasn't any other powers. It was Christ himself, who is God. And so what does that say to us now? Well, there's I don't know where you are living, but where we live, there's a lot of these programs that try to find alternative explanations for how life got on Earth. Of course, one of the great ones is evolution. That's one. But then there is also that we were brought here by aliens from other planets. They planted us here, blah, blah, blah. So it's a lot of crazy stuff. But let's suppose that aliens existed. What Paul's saying, that even if aliens do exist, that our God is not just the God of Earth or the God of our solar system. He's the God of all creation. That if there are alien civilizations, he's the God there as well. And that he rules over all of that. That if we happen to have contact with any of these supposed alien civilizations, they'll already know about our God because he is the creator of them as well as us. There won't be any well, anyway, I won't go too far down that road. I'm just saying this is the point he's trying to make. And also it's interesting that Paul, when he's writing, is talking about things that are visible and invisible. Now, he had some things in mind, like the angels, which would be invisible and so on. But there's also the sense in the ancient world that there was much that was unseen, that they knew things existed, although they couldn't see them. Now we have instruments so we can see them. We have microscopes so that we can look in water or at our blood or whatever, and we can see these one-celled creatures or one-celled entities. They couldn't see any of that, but we can, and say it was invisible to them, and God's the creator of them. Then we have the atoms that make up all of life, all of creation, like the mountains behind me, or what makes up you, the atoms. That they couldn't possibly see those. And we haven't been until very recent history able to see those. And he's saying he created that as well. Also, although they could look into the heavens and see the sky and see the stars, they couldn't see the galaxies. They had no clue what all was out there. Nor we don't even have a clue as to what all is out there. We can only see a tiny sliver of it. And Paul is saying that go beyond your imagination, and we need to do the same. Go beyond your imagination. Go beyond anything you could think about. And he is the creator of all of that. There is absolutely nothing that falls outside of his creative power. Now, that's very important for us to realize, because he was refuting the Gnostics, but also exalting our Lord Jesus Christ. He says also, those are whether thrones or powers or rulers or authorities. Now, what is Paul referring to here? Well, a couple of things really he could be referring to, and he may mean them. There were, of course, the earthly rulers and the powers and authorities, the governments, the Roman government, the government that existed in Palestine at that time. But he also could have been referring to the strong Jewish belief about the ranks of angels. And that was also believed in some of the other teachings as well, the Gnostic teachings about these ranks of angels and so on. And he's saying that if these exist or how they exist, he is the ruler over all of these other authorities, that any authority they have is given by his permission. So remember that the authority of your government, wherever you live, is given by permission of God. And that's one reason we have to honor our leaders, is because God has not necessarily appointed that particular leader, because some of them are quite evil, frankly, like we look at Putin right now. But he is the Lord who is allowed for these systems to exist. And he wants them to exist for his own glory and for his own purposes. Okay, what else do we see? It says, all things have been created through him and for him. Now, again, he's saying there are not multiple gods. They are all created through Christ. Nobody else, no other intermediary. And because of this, all things depend upon him. That the universe as it exists was his idea. Listen, all the beauty of creation you see when you go outside and you see the flowers and you see the insects, you see the birds, when you see the animals of all sorts, when you see the face of a small child, when you see, those are all God's idea. That was all his, and it's his workmanship. He meant for it to be pleasing to us. It is beautiful because he made it beautiful. It is something that is, and he's been generous with the beauty. No matter where you go in the world, I've had the opportunity to go to a number of countries in the world. There is beauty in all those countries, all those places around the earth, because God has been generous. He has given the world so much more. And we, no matter how much we've seen in our lifetime, we can still go to somewhere new and we have our breath taken away by the beauty that is there. And that's all God's idea. That's all him. And so that's what Paul is saying. He finally says, he's before all things, and in him all things hold together. That means that the Lord is the glue. Now remember that the Greeks had the idea that there was this logos, this idea that there was something in the universe that held everything together. And we know that that is actually true. The Lord, well, we know that the Lord does that. And for example, okay, I'm kind of mumbling here a bit, but we know this, the world of physics tells us this, that the atoms in our body are far enough apart that it should be that solid, there is no solid things, that my hand should just pass one right through the other. But that's not true. I should be able to pass through a wall without the atoms from the wall, the atoms in my body touching. I should be able to do that, but I can't. And you listen, if you want to try it today, you'll find out you cannot pass through the wall without bang, there it is, it'll stop you. So what causes the bang? What causes, if that's how far these things are apart, what causes that to happen? Well, there's these forces that they tell us sort of make everything adhere together. And even though there's these great distances between the atoms that we can't pass through. For example, they tell us Mount Everest, and you see a picture here of Mount Everest. If you took out all the space between the atoms of Mount Everest, it would be the size of this easy chair. All of it, but it would weigh exactly the same amount as Mount Everest. So you wouldn't do a whole lot of rearranging your rooms with furniture that weighed that much. Anyway, so why are the atoms so far apart? Why can we not pass through? Because there's something holding this all together. And Paul says it is Christ who is doing that. And if the Lord wanted to destroy the universe, all he would have to do in an instant is say, I'm changing that rule. And everything would fly apart. Everything would break down. We would break down. All of it would break down. So there's the Lord in his wonder has not only just created everything, but he's holding it all together by his power. And remember, here it says he is before all things. And what Paul was saying too, is for all this to exist, Christ was there. He's the builder of it. None of this predates him. None of this goes before him. None of it will exist after him. Well, of course, he'll always exist. None of it can exist without him. All of our physical universe, all of the spiritual realm depends upon Christ. Now, this is important because the all-sufficiency of Christ is, we know it. We sing the old song of the Salvation Army, Christ is all, yes, all in all, my Christ is all in all. And by that we mean he's our sufficiency. He's the source of our salvation. But what Paul is saying is that as important as that is, and it is, he holds the whole universe together. He's the author of it. He is the only one. And listen, friends, when people try to find their way around God and try to find other explanations for what exists now and try to pretend like it all operates on its own, it is utter foolishness. And they're as foolish as the Gnostics were. They're foolish in their own way. The very world itself says, it screams out, it was created by a loving and powerful God. And to ignore that is to ignore what's right in your face. Well, there's something for you to think about this week and consider until we meet again. God bless you.